Grace Church.
Good morning.
Oh man, I'm feeling really good right now. Me and my wife just got in last night. Yeah, we just took a day trip to a beautiful place. Very tropic. I mean, we just really enjoyed ourselves. Took a day trip to the beautiful country of Wakanda. We went there last night. And we enjoyed ourselves. We spent time on a nice horizon, enjoyed a nice sunset, got some good clothes, learned some good gestures and everything. So we enjoyed ourselves last night. So if you're not a Marvel fan, you probably know what I'm talking about. But I went to go see Black Panther last night. Me and my wife. We went to go see the movie. And it was a pretty good movie. I'm not going to spoil it for you, so don't worry about that. But we really enjoyed ourselves. And the thing that I really got from the movie was just the moral principles that it had in it. And how it is taught about how a man needed support to become a king. And if you're not familiar with the story of Black Panther, he's an African prince who is taking the throne of his kingdom. And he also doubles as a superhero, Black Panther, to protect his village because they have very good resources that none other world knows of that they want. So that's who Black Panther is. Now, the moral that I got from there is the support he had. He had a whole village that wanted to see him succeed, that wanted to see him be a king. So he just had so much support. And now the person, in the movie that he just went to countless times for support is his father. In both in spirit and physically, he went to his father. And I couldn't help but look at that and see that, we have a lot of support in this life, but I'll tell you this, there's no support like the support of our Father.
Amen.
And I'll tell you today, church, we're going to learn how there's no support like the support we have of our Heavenly Father. And truly, that's the person who has our back the most. Yeah. So today, we're going to learn how the Lord has our back and how much He supports us in every way. And we're going to learn about that through the life of Timothy and how he was called to do something. But he would need the support of people around him. And most importantly, he would need to know and see how the Lord had his back. So please turn with me to Acts chapter 16. So just getting to know Timothy a little bit. Timothy was a young man. He was a really young man. Around his 20s, kind of like around my age, late 20s, around there. So he was pretty young. He was good friends with the Apostle Paul. He was very good friends with him. And Paul is a person we know that is one of the best missionaries out there. And so he took Timothy under his wing, and they just became really good friends and became a mentor of him. So he's really good friends with Paul. He also is a pastor of a church in Ephesus. And both 1st and 2nd Timothy talk about how Paul was mentoring him through that. He wrote letters to Timothy and guided him through that process. So a big part of the Bible that mentions Timothy is in 1st and 2nd Timothy when he accepted that pastoral role, and also when Paul met him in the book of Acts. Those are the two main parts you see Timothy in the Bible. Where we're going to focus on to get started is just where he met Paul in Acts chapter 16. So please turn with me to Acts chapter 16, verses 1 through 3. Acts chapter 16, verses 1 through 3. So, in this movie, Black Panther, there's a lot of things he has to inherit. There's a lot of things he has to learn before he takes the throne. A lot of things that his father is teaching him. And so before, all the cool action scenes start, before he takes the throne, we see a very humble young Black Panther learning from his dad, just building just the foundation of what it means to be a king, what it means to really believe in himself. So that's where, we learn and we start to see that, okay, it's much deeper than, putting on that suit, I'm ready to go. It's much deeper than that. It's a spiritual thing. So he had to understand who he was, who his village was, and just build that foundation before he could ever do anything. And so that's how his father first helped him. Now see that his father supported him spiritually. And when we look at what the Lord does for Timothy first, before he could do anything with the church or with Paul, is he supported him and he built his foundation spiritually. So we see here in chapter 16 that Paul came also to Derbe and to Lystra. A disciple was there named Timothy.
the son of a Jewish woman who was a believer, but his father was a Greek. He was well spoken of by the brothers at Lystra and Iconium. Paul wanted Timothy to accompany him, and he took him and circumcised him because of the Jews who were in those places, for they all knew that his father was Greek. As they went on their way through the cities, they delivered to them for the observances the decisions that had been reached by the apostles and elders and who were in Jerusalem. So the churches were strengthened in faith, and they were increased in numbers daily. Okay, so a lot of things right there. We learn a lot of ways how the Lord first came to Timothy. And we see before, like I said, before he could become missionary, before he did all these things, he first came to him and met him in the town of Lystra. That's his hometown. So Paul is on his second missionary journey, and he's traveling, he's doing church planting, he's doing all these things, and he comes across this small town of Lystra. And that's where Timothy was. So that's where he met him. He was in the temple just talking to just the people, the local people of the city, and he was kind of just talking to them, just trying to get the feel of it. And they probably brought up Timothy because he was a very good kid, very well-to-do kid, had some home, struggles they didn't know much about, like that kid in your community. You know he's a good kid, but you don't know much about his home life and where he's from, but he's very respectful, he's a very well-to-do kid, and he has a promising future, but he just needs someone there for him, and he needs structure in his life. So when Paul was talking to these men, of course, yes, they pointed out Timothy, as you see in the verses, when they said they spoke very highly of him. And the first thing he did was he converted him, he circumcised him into being a Christian. So we see that the Lord first placed faith in him. And from after that, he gives him a spiritual mentor in Paul. And as we go forward, we see the spiritual worship, we see the spiritual support. So first he gave him faith. And then he gave him a spiritual mentor in Paul. And the last thing he did, like they said, after that, they were called to go and do evangelism. They were called to go off in these places. And now when they were doing this, Paul had just became a Christian. Okay, and the importance of having a spiritual mentor, as you all know, when we just became a Christian, just came to faith, is there's a lot of waywardness. We're still learning our way around. So it's really good to have that person there for you to help you out. I remember when I was really wanting to know what I was going to be, and a good spiritual mentor in my life was my mother. And when I was younger, I wanted to be a singer. Believe it or not, that's what I wanted to be. And I remember my mom, she looked at me with a smile. She's like, okay, let me hear a solo. So, I did a little, I think it was a little Marvin Gaye, I can't remember it. And she gave me a little smile afterward. Just a little twinkle on a little smile afterward. She said, oh boy, I love you, but you can't sing. She said I can't sing. I was like, oh. But she was looking at me because she knew what I really could do, and that was called to be a preacher. And so that spiritual mentorship really helps someone that's very young in their faith and young in their years as well. So that's why when he came to faith, Paul immediately stepped in as his spiritual mentor. You see that. And that also helped him in God giving him a calling, because now he's going on these missionaries trips with Paul. So he can have real practical experience to see, okay, is this just what I need to do? Is this what my calling is? So we see that, and we see that timeline of how the Lord really works when he gives you some spiritual support. And we can see that in our own life as well. So in the movie again, like I said, he gave him the spiritual first. He always was there for him, taught him who he is, gave him spiritual support, all right, built him up to be the king that he will be in the future. So that's how we started off with it. Next, we see that all the fun stuff. He gives him the physical support, as far as giving him the actual tools to be a king, to be Black Panther, to be a protector. So we see that that's where the suit comes in. We see that's where all the nice gadgets and gadgets come in to actually equip him to do his job as a king. He puts the people around him so they can trust in his lead. He gives them the tools, like I said, physical tools, learning how to fight, all that stuff, the nice, attire. I'm saying, I got this from Wakanda, I'm telling you, it's really good. So he gave them a lot of things to fit the part, how he looked as a king, and how he carried himself as a protector of this village. So when I look at that, I can't help but look at how the Lord gives us physical support and the tools he gives us, the physical tools. So we look at how he gave that to Paul, and how he gave that to Timothy. We look at how he provided the way for him to go and do church planting and missionary trips with Paul. Now, they went everywhere, like everywhere. And when I was looking at these places, I said, oh my goodness, they were just on a tour of Europe and everything. It was just really interesting to all the places they went. And it says here, in Acts, God had sent Timothy out to do church planting and missionary journeys with Paul. They had went to Glacia, Torma, Philippi, Berea, and continued into Athens, Thessalonica, Corinth, Macedonia, Ephesus, and Greater Asia. So they were going everywhere. And when you're on a trip like that, going and coming, just ripping and going, you're going to get a lot of physical support, financial support. You're going to need those type of things. So the Lord provided the way for Timothy to do these trips. He provided the way for Paul to be there for him, and mainly for him to just do these trips, because he really wanted him to see and experience what it's like to be a pastor, what it's like to preach, what it's like to baptize people. So he provided these way in missionary trips. Now, a big part of Timothy's journey was becoming a pastor, becoming more of a man. And we look at when they first found him, Timothy didn't really have much of a spiritual mentor. That's why Paul stepped in like he did. He stepped in as a father figure. And we see that in how his father was a Greek. So we knew that he was a good kid, but his father was a Greek, so he didn't receive the teachings of a Christian. He didn't have that mentorship there. So Paul stepped in like he did because he knew that, okay, when you are a man, you learn from a Christian man. You learn these type of tools, how to respect yourself, how to respect your elders, how to respect your wife, how to lead as a man. Now, he was a good kid, had a lot of promise, but he was missing that. And so Paul stepped in as his father figure, and he just taught him a lot of things. And being someone me who didn't grow up as a father, I can tell you that it's very difficult. You know that you have promise, you know that you can do things, but it's very difficult to figure out how am I to do it in this world. And so I'm really thankful that I had those father figures in my life that helped me and instilled in me those tools of being a pastor, of being a respectful man to women, to children, to elders. And so that's what the Lord gave Timothy. So those physical things, the church planting and going on missionary trips, provide the way of finances, and that ministry experience that there's nothing like it. God provided that physical support towards him. He gave him a father figure in Paul, that physical support as well. And looking at what he experienced the most, I look at the raw ministry that he had in that physical support. When he went out to all these places, they experienced things that he would have never experienced if he had not gone. First, it was risking death. In Acts chapter 17, it was in Thessalonica and Berea where Paul was preaching this town as they were going on their second missionary journey, and he had took Timothy with him. These two places, Thessalonica and Berea. These two places, they went there and they were in the synagogue. And Paul was more so, he wasn't just preaching, but he was trying to prove some of the people in there wrong in their doctrine, in their theology, because they were still convinced that it was a work-based faith. They were still convinced of that. So he took his time in there, proving them wrong, showing them that Jesus Christ is the way. So in Acts chapter 17, these two towns are really what it focused on, where he was in there. And some of these men started to believe, they started to receive it, but the majority of them and trusted more their stubbornness than the truth. And so they turned on Paul, and they tried to ensnare him, they tried to kill him. And now, during this time, I can't imagine Timothy just being this young and now placed in this position to support and back Timothy up. But we see that this is real life. This is raw ministry. This is something that Timothy needed to be a part of because he's going to preach at a church later on in his life. So for him to be there for Paul and support him through this just showed a lot of what he got out of these missionaries and these church planting trips. So he was strengthened as a leader in these assignments. And you see that the loyalty, he also learned loyalty. When Paul was in prison in places in Philippians and in 2 Timothy, Paul wrote to Timothy while he was in prison. And so that you see that loyalty as he stayed with him and he supported him as well. So these missionary trips meant a lot to Timothy because it gave him just the idea, it gave him just the church planning and the missionary trips, just understanding them. And he also gave him a father figure, and it gave him a realistic picture of what raw ministry is, real ministry is, that he would need as a pastor, future pastor. So these things meant a lot to him, and this is how the Lord really provided that physical tools for him to be a pastor in the future. So going back to Black Panther, a part of the movie I saw I really liked is, okay, now, he took time to, when he was younger, to give him that spiritual, guidance and just really instill in him who he is, who he needs to become. And then he took time to give him the proper tools, the nice superhero suit, the people that were behind him, all those fun type of things, those physical tools. But the thing that he needed most, that his father kept constantly pouring into him, was affirmation. There is one part where he was very discouraged, and he bowed before his father, and he was just so discouraged in himself, he didn't think that he could become king. And the only thing his dad said was, stand up, you are a king. Stand up, you are a king. And in that he said that you are meant to do this. You can do this. It wasn't in an arrogant way. It wasn't in a, not understanding what he's going through way. It was a, you can do this. Everything points to you being this king. Get up and lead. And so when we look at what the Lord does for Timothy, when he had his bouts of questioning if this is really what he can do, and he had a lot of them, because remember, he's still young in age and young in faith too. And now at this point, he's with Paul, and he's also now about to lead this church in Ephesians, in a church that is really struggling with a lot of things, not really just carrying themselves how they should, just preaching wrong things, and just not really running it well. And he's voicing this position of pastor and evangelist. So you could imagine that he's starting to doubt himself as he accepts this new role. And it came in ways of everyone just keep on saying he's too young and everything. But there are a couple things that Paul said to him, and the Lord said to him that really just encouraged him. Was he said that, the verbal support, he said Timothy, you are called to do this. You are called to be all of these things. He said in 1 Timothy, this I charge, I entrust to you, Timothy, my child, in ordinances with prophecies previously made about you, that by them you may wage good warfare, holding faith and good conscience. By rejecting this, some of them have been shipwrecked. So we see there that the Lord is encouraging Timothy as he's now accepting this role. All right? You see that he's guiding him into that spot. And through Paul, he's just reminding him constantly that, hey, we set this thing up to where you are a believer. You are now a man of God. I've given you the physical tools, and you've been on those mission trips. I'm now giving you a church team. You have Paul as an advisor. Now it's time for me to remind you of just what you're supposed to be. And he affirms him more and more as a pastor there. And we see another instance later on in 1 Timothy when they were continuing to doubt Timothy in his youthfulness. It says, let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example in your speech and conduct and love, faith, and purity. So guys, Timothy was going through just a lot of just self-doubt this time. But what encouraged him more to do the job that he did, and he did a good job at that church, he really cleaned it up, was he listened to the affirming words of his father and his Lord, and the mentors around him. Paul, he listened to that, and that encouraged him even more. And so I said I had to turn it up there. When I'm training people as a personal trainer, because I'm a personal trainer as well, I look at myself as, okay, I'm starting them off, I'm building their workout program, their fitness program in the beginning. I give them that support, that foundation, and then I turn and I give them the workouts. I let them know how to do them. I let them know how you're to train. Okay, I got that spiritual, I got those programs, the foundation laid, and then I got those physical tools laid. They know how to work out. Okay, enough talking for me. Let's turn up the music, okay, and let's get it going. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to let you know that you can do this. So that is what our Lord is doing with Timothy right now. I've given you all of what you need as far as a spiritual base, and I've given you all the physical tools that you need to be successful in this role. And now I'm going to step back and I'm going to be beside you, affirming you and encouraging you. I'm going to turn it up. I'm going to encourage you.
Good.
And so when I look at that, I look at just that really loud-mouthed friend that you have that is not really annoying, he's not really bad, but he always says encouraging words all the time. And so that's what the Lord is. It's an encouraging father. That's what Paul is, an encouraging friend that continues to remind him of what Timothy is supposed to do.
Amen.
So what's the takeaway from this? Do we look at the trip to Wakanda? Do we go see Black Panther? Our takeaway from this is in everything we do, we must know that the Lord has our back. In everything we need to do, we must know that the Lord has our back. He has our back in the way He sets a spiritual foundation. The way He brings us to faith. He gives us the people around us, the mentors, to make sure that we're doing the right thing, make sure that we're on the right path. And then when we're ready to take that step towards our call, He gives us the physical tools, the finances to do such things, like to go to college, like to finish our education, like to do a ministry. He puts those things in our path, those resources in our way. And verbal support, He affirms us all the time. He reminds us all the time. It's not just us learning something new when we come to church and read our Bible. It's also Him reminding us of who we are, constantly, over and over again. So this is the depth of how the Lord has our back. This is the depth of just how much He supports us, how much He wants from us. That movie meant so much to me because I didn't have a father growing up. I didn't. And so to see someone there have that support of his father, both physically and in spirit, have that support, it reminded me that, Malcolm, you have a father. From the day you were born to the day you were born, you have a father that's been there for you. He may have not come there earlier, just as Timothy, the faith didn't come to him when he was a little kid. It came to him when he was older. The faith came to me when I was older, but it was there. God was building up that time where, in Timothy's small town, Paul could be there, and that could be where he received that faith. The Lord's been with him the whole time. It's time for Timothy to receive that faith. And for him to know that the Lord has his back. That's also what it was too. And for me as well, and for us as well, if it wasn't when you were little, or if it was when you were little, it's whenever the Lord wants you to know that He has your back. But He's always been with you, always been there for you. So as far as, when we look at trusting, we look at support systems, whether you have all the support in the world, or whether you have none at all, know that the good Lord in heaven, your Father, has your back. And he has always supported you, and he always will. And church, today I want us to leave with that. I want us to think more about that. I also want us to go see Black Panther. That's a good movie too. Go see that.
All right, yeah.
But I also want us to be reminded of what the Lord has in us, what the Lord supports us with. And that's our spiritual support, that foundation, that physical support, those tools, those resources. And thirdly, he encourages us. I want us to think about these things. So I'm going to close in prayer. And I want us to just take the time to remember how the Lord has our back. He has the back of everyone who believes. Dear Lord, I thank you for this time, Lord. I thank you for just the opportunity to come here and just tell how you have supported me and how you support us all, Lord, and just how you blessed us in ways that we cannot imagine. So, Lord, you have our back. And we trust that. Help us in the ways that we don't know that. Help us, Lord. In every way, I trust you, Lord. In every way, I want us to understand that you are here for us. Spiritually, physically, and emotionally and verbally, Lord, you are here with us. Over Grace Church